Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the Business of Creativity podcast, where we highlight creativity in business, leadership, management, and entrepreneurship. Our guests today are Wes Abercrombie. Wesley is the Vice President at Peak Sports Management, and we have the owner and President of Peak Sports Management, Ryan Holloway. Greetings. Thanks for joining us.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having us, Ty.
Glad to have you both on. Now, Wes, of course, you and I go back 17,000 years to, I don't know, how old were you in 2003 when I first moved to Waco?
Third grade, so I was 10.
10 years old
10?
When I first moved to Waco, which is crazy, right? It's so interesting. And of course, I've seen your career progress over time from graduating college, working with Texas Sports Hall of Fame, and then working and moving up within the Peak Sports Management whole sphere, right, environment. And then I've gotten to know you through Wes in terms of what you do in hiring young people, giving them opportunities to help schools expand their reach, tell their story, and those types of things. The reason I have you two on is I want to talk about an entrepreneur who starts a business and they're heavily involved, and then they start expanding the business. And at some point, you gotta earn the trust and give the trust of those who you have around you to help run the business, right? Before we do that, first, tell us a little bit, just in case anybody is listening, what exactly Peak Sports Management is, what it started as, and actually what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started in 2012. So, geez, we're almost in our teenage years. I guess we're tweeners right now, full of attitude. So we're a sponsorship and sales firm. We really specialize in three things: sponsorship sales, ticket sales, and NIL, right? And we're in 19 states, work with 25 plus schools, and it's a ton of fun. We predominantly work in the Division I mid-major level, making a big push for the FBS level, yet we're still excited to serve our high-impact Division II programs. We just understand what a lot of these college athletic departments really need, and especially now as we're entering in a new era of college athletics, which is very crazy and changes a ton.
Yep. Okay. Wesley, you have been with this organization, how long is it now?
8 years.
And when you came in, how old was the organization?
So it was 4 years old.
4 years.
4 years
Yeah,
old.
we had 3 schools when I started.
And so if you could tell the story of your impact for being in there 8 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my goal coming in is I wanted to be a fundraiser. So I started off at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, raised revenue. Then because of that, I was promoted to an actual school, Southeastern Louisiana. Got there, raised revenue, and I've just kind of gone over the philosophy of, if you do well at what your job's supposed to do, everything else will take care of itself. And so Ryan's given me the opportunity to grow through the company, and now I'm still raising revenue. It's just from a 40,000 foot view. I'm trying every day to build the company. A lot of that starts with money, trying to be innovative with some of the NIL that's going on, and just always studying my craft. But for me, it's making sure we got the right people on board, training them properly so that they can become excellent in sales as well. And I know that if I do that, everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, which is excellent. Tell me what you saw in him. I mean, outside of the outcomes, right? Raising revenue, it's like, okay, bottom line is increasing. This kid has a big impact on it. Let's look at this kid. But there has to be intangibles that you saw in him as you started promoting him in the company.
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is more than just a small startup company.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in startup phase, you could call it. So, yes, he joined us when we were just 4 years in, but you could look at this as an athletic department that's been around for 100 years with maybe a new administration. You've got to hire people. You got to bring people into your fold that are bought into the culture and that they're builders, right? So when Wes worked with us at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, he really started off as an intern. I think we were paying him $500 a month. I mean, we were breaking every labor law in the country. He was also working for a State Farm agent, and then he was working at world famous George's, waiting tables.
Yeah.
And this is what we saw, and this is what we see in out of the successful people in our organization and just successful organizations, is when people force you when they put you in a position where you have to make a change. So, man, Wes was killing it, working very few hours with us, but he was maximizing those hours. And then we went to him and said, hey, which one do you want to quit, State Farm or George's? and he said, hey, this State Farm thing's not for me. So he dropped that. He kept crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was able to get out of George's, and then he forced us the entire time. So with what we saw is just knows the grind. All the stuff that you see on Twitter and Instagram of working hard, working long hours, maximizing times like that. But ultimately, he's not fancy. He's a builder. He likes to roll his sleeves up, and that's what every organization needs. And you might even look at some very, very established, very successful athletic departments that have been around forever. They have to continue to evolve. So you need people that are builders and that have that spark in the belly to really make a change and build on the success that even they've had.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Wes, you've hired people, right? I recommended a couple people to you. You've hired people I recommended, which for me, I always appreciate that. You know what I mean? It means you trust my word to be able to bring people in. And
shout out Philip.
Talk about your leadership style in terms of hiring somebody for a role, training them to do the role, and then allowing them to execute the role without being too micromanagey, I guess is the word I'll use.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think our philosophy at Peak is we want builders, like Ryan just talked about. So we have to find the balance on, our interview process is extensive. We want someone that wants to come in and help us grow the business. So we screen kind of based on that. If we feel like somebody just wants a title or certain things like that, that might be certain companies' hiring philosophy. It's not really ours. And so we let people know we're going to pour as much into you as possible because here's where we're trying to go. And we want to always paint that picture. And here's how you can be a part of that. Because if you can't paint a vision to the people you're hiring, well, then what are they working towards?
Right.
It becomes they work towards themselves, and people are going to kind of do that anyway. But and so we do a ton of training. Or we have an open door policy. Anyone has my phone number. Same thing with Ryan. And so we're big fans of extreme ownership. So if someone's not succeeding, it's on us. And so we're very prideful of that. And so it's just important for us to continue to pour those resources into people. And now you got to make sure that they're well trained. And eventually, people will let you know, okay, hey, I want more hands-on training. I want less. And I think it comes down to you got to know each individual person that you're responsible for their success. Some want you to be more hands-on, some don't. Now, at the end of the day, you might have to be with certain people. We don't ever want to do that, but it's just sitting down, getting to know them individually and figuring out how they want to operate. And then kind of molding to that.
Yeah. I find that interesting. Back at Baylor, I remember you came to me one time, I was working at the AFCA, and you were like, man, I'm doing these things with my fraternity and trying to get these guys to do what's necessary for us to be successful. I'm having some trouble with doing this, right? Just leadership thing that you were trying to focus on. We talked, we figured out some suggestions, you took those suggestions. You go into Texas Sports Hall of Fame as an intern and help out there, but you're not leading anybody, right? And so at some point, Ryan, you give him a role where now he's leading people. And so you have to figure out what is my leadership philosophy and how am I leading these people to where I know I'm self-motivated, but they may or may not be, but I at least got to get them to understand that their role is important in the grander scheme of things. I want both of you to talk about, Wesley, when you started leading and then trying to get other people to understand about leadership.
Yeah.
And then you talk about where was the point where you figured just because he was an overachiever on his own doesn't mean he's a good leader, but then you had to trust him to lead in the organization.
And that's great question. So for me, I'm not gonna sit and act like I got this figured out, because I don't. And I don't think anyone does if they act like they do. I grew up in a tough. My dad, ex NFL player. He was tough. Discipline was how he is. So also I'm 30, so I'm going in between the kind of old school way of doing things and then the new millennial way. So I grew up in this weird mix of old school, hardcore, you do what you say, you don't ask questions. So now you can't really lead that way. You have to get to know people individually. So when I first started managing when I was young, it was Southeastern or even my first promotion when I was overseeing a team of 6 or 7 people. Like, I came in pretty hot. My style at that point, because it was all I knew,
it was based on the old school.
Based on old school. Hey,
what I say,
you do what I say, do it, trust what I say, and it wasn't effective. And sometimes that's kind of my natural, because that's how I grew up. That's my natural fallback. Ryan isn't that way, and so I've learned a lot on how he does it. His strength, and I think this is where we balance each other, is he gets to know people. It's important. It's natural for him. It's not, I have to try at it. And so I've learned, okay, being effective nowadays, you still need to hold people accountable. That's one thing. But if they know you care about them and why you're holding them accountable, these guys work way harder than just telling people what to do. But it took some
time to do that.
Time and some hard lessons to learn that.
Still learning it, I imagine.
Still learning it, yeah.
Ryan, talk about when you come in with a different leadership style, because we're nearly the same age, but our parents and the people we play for were like he described. I play for Nick Saban. You go.
Oh, yeah.
This is how it is. Do it, or you don't want to be in the program no more, right? Talk to me about that when you developed that leadership style, and then when you developed this trust in Wesley to be a leader, 6 people or whatever he was over when he first started.
Yeah, Wes talks about he came from a different generation. I mean, we're the Gen Xers. Yeah. I think we're the best out of every single generation. For me, I always just tried to go with my own style and just really be myself and provide a lot of honesty. I've also embraced what I don't know, right? And I've really tried to build a culture of leadership. And I think this is where Wes really excelled in the leaders in our organization. Of some people, if I say I don't know what we need to do in this situation, they might look at that as being very vulnerable, mm-hmm. or what's going on here. But I've built a really good trust tree, and I say, guys, I don't know what we're going to do in here. What are y'all's thoughts? And so that's passed on to our leaders, where when they come across a problem, they're being very collaborative with our employees as well. What I've really appreciated of Wes and his growth with us, again, these are all the adages that you've seen, is mm-hmm. I've just delegated a lot of that stuff to him, and I've been open to him failing, right? And there were times when I said, hey, this is how you could screw it up. Here's a pitfall. There's been other times where I haven't told him that, and I just needed him to go fail and then pick up the pieces, because you can say things a million times. Hey, you need to lead through this. You need to manage this way, da-da-da-da-da. They're going to do it their route, yeah. And there will be failure. It's just... You've got to, at that point is when you can really fine-tune that leadership. You can't give them the perfect playbook. I'm an I personality. We do the DISC analysis. Wes is a D, so he's very direct. For me, I'm very inspirational. So if somebody screws something up, I'm going to tell them a wonderful story and pick them back up. Whereas Wes is going to be like, hey, come on, let's do this and move forward. And that's what's been special is, for myself, I really take a ton of input on things. I really try to look at my weaknesses and delegate those to folks just like Wes. I look at my strengths. I try to keep those to myself and utilize those. And that's where I think you see really, really good leadership. And those are the things we try to always embody. A lot of times you fail yourself on things like that. So it's been a really, really fun process to see Wes really matriculate through the process with us.
Are there opportunities, I guess, and I assume there are, but you give him opportunity to be a leader, tell him, allow him to fail, allow him to lead, but you see his leadership style. Do you coach him up on his leadership style, or do you just let him be himself? Tell me how you lead that way.
Without a doubt, I will do that. So it's a few things. Is I recognize who he is, his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. I do my best to put up guardrails, right? And then there's opportunities. I think the most important thing, and this is really, really difficult, especially in today's climate of athletics with so much turnover with athletic directors. I own the company, right? We don't have a parent company. We don't have investors. We don't have people telling us how to do things. So early on, especially when Wes came to our headquarters, we would tell Wes, you're our guy. Like, you're good with us. And why is that important is when people don't have the trust of their immediate boss, they're not going to really perform at their best level, right? So he's always been right with us. It's like, all right, you're good. So whenever we push back on him of, hey man, you could have handled it this way, at first he's like, all right, yes sir, yes ma'am. But we told him, hey, if you think there's a better way, tell us. do these types of things. And I mean, we had a I would say a battle yesterday, maybe even an epic battle. There were some cuss words dropped. No fists were thrown, but
Friction is good.
Friction is awesome. And so one thing I told Wes, even when he became a general manager, is I never want to meet in the middle with you.
Yeah.
We're never going to compromise. I want you to push me in one direction. I'm going to push you in another direction. Kara, my business partner, will push the two of us in a completely different direction. And then we'll end up in a spot that we never knew the three of us could end up on. And that is true collaboration. It's not, well, okay, Wes, I'll kind of do what you're doing. And Wes is like, all right, Kara, I'll kind of do. And I'm like, all right, guys, I'll go along. Like, we're just going to meet in the middle. We're not going to improve ourselves. So that's a big part of our process, is pushing back on each other all the time.
I appreciate that. What I wonder in studying business, entrepreneurship, you start a business and you're heavily involved with it. Then you start adding people to the team, right? And slowly but surely a culture develops, right? And as a business gets to a certain point, as the person who started the business, either A, you have this very specific set of skills and the business is growing around that skills. And so now you have to go into this leadership role. And so you got to learn how to be a leader. Or you are well put at developing the culture for the business. And as it expands, you are still involved, but it gets to a point to where do you still need to be as involved as you are as an owner, right? You bring in people you trust to run multiple parts of the business. When do you and how do you allow yourself to back up and not be as involved? I wonder if you've reached that point in peak where you got somebody you trust in Wes, and of course your business partners around you.
So it sounds like this podcast turned from a podcast to a sales pitch for your services, Tai.
It's hilarious.
But without a doubt, that is something that we're continuously really talking about. So going back to when we started the business, it's no different than an athletic director. They just show up at it could be an athletic department that's been around for 100 years. They need to get people involved, right? They just need people that are really, really bought in. And then you look up and you're like, holy cow, we're all too involved in some of these things. And, we talk about being at 30,000 feet, but geez, we're all sitting here at 10,000 feet, like on a good day. So that is something. So one thing that we've really, really tried to do, and we've really excelled at these things over the last 3 years. COVID gave us a lot of time to really sit back and look at things from afar. But we get out of the office a ton. We do tons of leadership retreats where we're just getting out. We were in an Airbnb, sitting there all the way from breakfast to late night, just hashing out things on different things of what are my strengths. Let's really, really leverage those. What are my weaknesses? Let's cover those up. And then how can Wes and our 3 regional sales directors, how can they be a part of those types of things? So absolutely, that's a huge thing, is to get me into something completely different. And then truth be told, this is what we all forget about in this industry. Every single day that we're leaders is one day removed from actually doing the job of the people you're leading. So you really have to respect the opinions of people that are quote unquote below you, right? And so we talk a lot about that. I think I would be the worst seller in our company, and that's the God's honest truth, because I haven't sold a single sponsorship in years, right? So that's something that we're always talking about, of how can I get not only to 30,000, but 40,000, 50,000, right?
Sounds good in theory. But Wes, give us the practical application of what he's talking about. Either just taking on responsibility so it's off his plate, whether he wants it or not, or even having a conversation with him like, hey, we can handle this. Like, you can go focus on this strategy for the next 5 to 10 years. Tell me about that actually in practice at the organization.
Yeah, because it's difficult when you have certain things pop up, and he's got, we all have a lot of pride in the company, but it's his company.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So there are times when it might be a small issue. We all want to dive into it. And then all of a sudden now it's 30 minutes times 30 minutes. We talk about Kara, who owns the company as well. So that's an hour and a half being spent in time on one subject.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is and we're being vulnerable here. He has learned how to give and relinquish trust.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to earn it. So I try to lead up. So I'll tell him at times, hey, let me handle this.
Yeah.
There are times where he says, well, this is why I'm going to be involved. And it's the rope analogy. So I want a really loose rope. I want to do things my way. he's got a hand on that rope. Now it started really tight and it's loosened.
Mm-hmm.
So that rope now I think is pretty long, but I've had to learn how he wants certain things done. There were times where I didn't trust the way he said things because I'm sorry, he's just saying this is his personality. And then I've failed and I've messed up and I've seen the repercussions of that. And I've got, okay, you know, this is why he said that. Now, if he didn't let me go fail, and that's what he's talking about, leaders you have to let people
go out and
go out.
Yeah.
Because if you hold that rope too tight, you're not really developing people.
Mm-hmm.
Good to great. I mean, you guys know the book.
Yeah.
It talks about how the best companies can succeed even when there's a change in ownership or CEO. And that's because they've set things up to where the people have been empowered and they can continue the culture. Where decent companies, they might run really effectively with one person, but when that person changes, it collapses. And that's oftentimes because people aren't empowered. So it's a interesting dynamic. I think if anybody's listening and you're in a leadership role and you feel like certain things should be done just because of the role you're in, you might want to really think about that, because there are times where I think what his best leadership quality is, he's vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So when he says something and I say, hey, why don't we think about doing it this way? He'll often go, okay, yeah, you're right. And then sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But it just creates that good, healthy dynamic.
Is there?
Let me add something. And I don't know if Wes and I have ever talked about this, but we have a code word. I don't even know if you would know what the code word is. I don't use it. He uses it when he really wants to assert himself on maybe a tricky situation, a personnel issue, or do we really need to be working at this school? He'll say, hey, boss.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you realize that.
That's how you know it's a serious, I need to get this out
kind
of situation?
Because he'll say, hey, have you thought about this or whatever? Hey, we need to do that. But he'll say, hey, boss.
Like, okay.
And then I sit up a little bit and I'm like, okay, he's got some passion behind what he's about to say. And then we sit down, we really figure out those things. So, but the culture of being vulnerable is a really big thing. And for me, it is extremely easy to do that because I own the company, mm-hmm. right? I do not envy athletic directors at all, because they might be really good with their president, but once their president retires or takes another job, that vulnerability, people are pointing, people are gunning for that job, all those types of things. It's a scary world out there. It really is. I have a ton of security because I own the company, right? And so I can be as vulnerable as I really need to be. And if there's people in our organization, and this is one thing for our hiring process, is when we talk about those things, hey, we want you to come to us with things. And if they're like, oh, geez, what kind of organization is this? We don't need them in there, right? They're too fancy for us. They're looking for the perfect road and all these types of things. But again, we just hire builders that want to roll their sleeves up.
Other aspects of, because he mentioned a situation comes up and then everybody has to give their input, right? 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here. Now we spent 90 minutes trying to figure out something that probably one person could have figured out quickly. I liken that to work for a long time with football coaches, and football coach will hear people's input and then the head coach goes to make the decision, right? Then I started working with administrators, and you go around a table 1,000 times before we get to a decision because everybody has to get their input, and then, then nobody who's making it. So what are we doing here? So I wonder about that in-house, right? Like, I guess roles are defined, but as the owner, right, I need to give my input, or do I have the final decision? As a co-owner, your business partner, I need to give my input. Do I have the final decision? As somebody who you trusted in this leadership position, I need to give my input. Who has the final decision? I wonder about how do you fix that type of thing in an organization like yours, where you and your co-owner have been involved since day one. Day zero, actually.
That's a wonderful question. A lot of it just happens because you're kind of forced, where we're sitting around a table as we're building this business, aggressively building this business, and we're like, why did we just waste 90 minutes? It's like the meme. This meeting could have been an email, right?
Yep.
And so we talk a lot about those. We've always said we don't want to be efficiency experts. We don't want to monitor our time down to the second. But there are times where it's like, if we're going to do big things, we need to go out and do big things, right? It really what it is, any successful organization, it is all about reaching a certain cadence, right? So we're just, chugging along and then adding speed to that cadence. And that's when things get really, really good. So that has been a huge focus of ours the last 3 years of, okay, what makes sense? I heard Jeff Bezos say this a long time ago, and it just clicked for me, because you always say you need to delegate things. Well, this is my baby. It's now a 12-year-old baby, right? Full of attitude. But I don't want to delegate things. But Jeff Bezos said, delegate your stress, right? And so I've really been focusing on what causes stress for me, and I delegate that. And that has helped immensely, being a leader of our organization.
The 8 years in, working very close to Ryan, you probably know what his stressors are. The stress that he does delegate, are those things a part of the rope you're talking about, the long, as the rope gets longer, right? And
right.
Freedom to make decisions and solve problems.
At first, right. So at first, you learn, okay, this is what stresses him out. How can I help? And it's got to fall within my assigned job duties, right? But so at first, you try to solve those problems without getting it to his desk. But then that stresses him more out because he doesn't know what's going on.
Okay.
So I've learned, okay, sometimes it takes, and this is why it's so crucial to keep your leadership team in place. Take care of them, because there are times where no one's perfect. So if he went and made every decision on his own, even listening to feedback, eventually he's going to make a mistake too. So what we've done is there's been multiple situations where we've sat around the table, me, Ryan, and Kara, we've hashed stuff out. And now we know, okay, when this happens, this is how we handle it. We know how he wants it handled. Kara wants it handled. It might not have been what was original. So whatever his opinion was originally, well, here we are now. This is where we all landed. We all agree. So now when that comes up again, it's just communication. Hey, this is going on. It's similar to this. I'm going to handle it this way. Cool. So it takes a couple of those conversations amongst leadership first, and then you know how to handle it moving forward, because it's happened before, or something similar has happened.
Yeah. Does that happen? I mean, has that process worked? Something has happened. We went through a process. Everybody had their input. We came to a decision. Now we have a process for this type of decision. So when it comes up again, is it still the 30 minutes each?
I'll give you like an amazing statistic here. And yes, it does. So since the pandemic, out of all of our schools that we work with, we only have 2 athletic directors that we signed the original deals with.
Okay.
2. There's been people retired, forced out, moved on to different jobs, just got out of athletics. That's a huge stressor, right? When you sign a deal with one person and then they leave, it flips everything on its head. Sure, we've got a contract there, but we want to be really good partners with the folks that are coming involved. So first few times it happened, a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Right? So we came up with a process in particular on that, as everybody in our field is doing that, our competitors as well. I think we've all gotten good at that. But that's just an example of, all right, here's a process. And it's even like, how do we do the process? I mean, all the way down to Trello. Okay, let's pull up that Trello card. We just had an AD leave. All right, rinse and repeat. Let's roll. Let's keep going,
Is there an aspect of relationships with the people in the chair is important? And I imagine as an owner, you probably have had relationships with all the people who have come and gone in those various, other than, the first 2 that you said are still there. Is there a point when those relationships get passed on to the leadership of your team when you get so big? Because think about it. Think about some of the competitors, right? Like a Learfield or a Playfly. If the person who's Christy Hedgebeth, head of Playfly, or a person who's running Learfield in the same space that you're in, if they're calling all that, they're the one who talk to athletic directors, it seemed like it would get problematic in terms of strategizing for how far Learfield can go, right? And so I wonder about that aspect with what you do there at Pete, you being the owner.
I hope that I never lose relationships and cannot maintain relationships with our athletic directors. That's something that's very, very important to us. We will continue to grow. We will never be at 75 properties. We'll never be at 100. We've got no desire to do that at all. We really want to be this boutique, feeling like a family operation, yet doing really big things. So I never want to lose that relationship. Now, truth be told, and it's very easy for me to joke about it, and it is true, the delegation of not the relationship, but getting stuff done, really the partnership, it was very difficult for me to relinquish that. But once we implemented it, it's been very, very easy. So to give you an example, all right, we got to renegotiate one little thing in the contract, or this deal or that deal. If I'm getting involved I'm just slowing the process down because I'm so darn busy, right? But when Wes gets involved, that thing gets turned around in 24 hours, and then we're moving forward. So being able to delegate the partnership relationship in the day-to-day, that has been a very easy process once we implemented it. But I will never lose touch with those folks if they need something, that type of a thing. Yeah. Absolutely. That's important.
So when you get in a situation like that, who do they call if there's a problem? You know what I mean? Because now because you talk about you have the relationship and that's important to you, but now you're delegating this to your lieutenant to get things done. Who is the athletic director or the person in charge on campus going to call when there's a problem, right? Because they can bog you down being the owner when you're trying to strategize, or they can go to the person that get it done in 24 hours. Talk to me about that.
Well, a lot of times the problems will still go if an AD needs something, or they're going to call the owner. I mean, sometimes they'll call me if it's small things, but we want that. That needs to be his role because that's what separates us from our competition. If they're calling me, schools like working with us because they can call the owner.
That's the benefit of it.
It's a benefit, and we need to maintain that. So how do we do that? He cannot run the relationships and the day-to-day operations. And that's the thing that we've been, I'm trying to lead up. He's trying to lead down on, okay, hey, you go do your role. This is what you need to do. Let me run the operations so I can help elevate and what's the word we use? Silo your role.
Absolutely.
But it's taken a few years to define roles because when I first started, he wasn't in a position to let me run the operations.
But that's excellent though. Your role has grown to be the relationship manager, fostering relationships, right? Allow that to be, and then these people handle all the operations. To me, I don't know where it is now you are on that in terms of separating those two, in terms of you accepting that I'm going to do the relationships and then you accepting that I run the operations. But once you get to that point, that makes it easy. You can just be out the office visiting all these ADs and golfing and all these types of things and doing what you do when you get to a point where you become just relationship management for a company, even as its own company while he's in-house running. Are you there yet where it's clearly you're not there?
No, we're working towards it.
We are working towards it at a fast pace. Without it, and you know what's awesome? Most of the calls I get from ADs, it's more of a request than a problem. Now we get some calls where it's like, hey man, we need to talk through this, but a lot of times it's like, hey, I'm in this pickle. Can y'all help with this, right? And then I always tell them, hey, let me huddle with my team. Hey, you'll probably hear from Wes on these types of things. But it has been a ton. I mean, I think I've got the greatest job in our company, right? I just get to talk to people all the time. But again, it goes back to, for those listening, it's all the things that we've heard. Check your ego at the door, all those types of things. Hire people better than you, but if you don't have that stopgap, right? If you're an AD and you don't want to delegate a lot of these things to your senior associate because you're worried that that person is going to look better than you, but again, I have the privilege, the ability, the honor, whatever you want to say, that with me being the owner, like unless there's some sort of coup that Wes and our regional sales directors are working on that I don't know about. If we were publicly traded, maybe like they could have a hostile takeover in the stock market, but unless there's a coup, I'm not going anywhere, right?
Okay.
So for me, I don't care about that. It doesn't bruise my ego. Yeah. I look at it just the opposite way when Wesley comes to me and says, hey, this is what happened at this school. This is how we handled it. I'm like, awesome. My stress in that is like zero. Right, and it just lets me sleep better at night and live life a little bit better, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like when you hire like an external AD, a Chris Del Conte who's going to go out and raise money, needs to have somebody inside who's handling the internal business, right?
Right.
And if a fundraising AD that's external came in and tried to handle the business, everybody would probably be like, bro, like, go raise the money. We'll handle this part. Talk about those relationships. So it's interesting on where the company is going, where you're going.
And Del Conte is a wonderful example. I worked for him at Rice. He hired me at Rice. And it's funny. I said, this guy will be I told him literally on my first day, you will be the AD at University of Texas, just his presence, right? People might say that the guy's nuts and he's got an ego or whatever. That guy, there's so much humility there. that guy's had so much success, and if you were to talk to him today about it, he said, I've got the greatest team around me, right? And he does not care about credit. He does not care about that at all. And if you can build an ecosystem like that, you are destined for a ton of success. So have we built that yet? No. Are we getting close to that? Who knows? Are we working towards that, or are we approaching it? Yes. And that's when the fun and the magic will certainly happen.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big advocate of the book, The Four Agreements. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And I think as you articulate where this thing could possibly go, you relationship management, talking to the ADs, potential ADs, all the people who are making these decisions, and you doing the operations of the business and solving the problems within 24 hours, which to me sounds excellent. It sounds to me like Peak has been successful and is positioned to continue to be successful in the college athletics and adjacent industry.
And here's what's interesting. So if you go back just a couple years, so when I was hired, it was to leverage Ryan's abilities, because Ryan was the owner. He was overseeing our GMs. So he got leverage now to grow. So now I'm overseeing the GMs. Well, now we've got 3 guys under me that I'm responsible for that are overseeing the GM. So I'm dealing with the same thing of relinquishing that control and responsibilities he's doing, because they're now as a team making it to where I don't have to do that. So it's just,
Wes, we got it, man. Just let us,
it's the same. It comes right back around.
I got it, man.
And so when I'm pissed off at him for not delegating, I'm now realizing the exact spot he was in. And so it's one of those things where you don't really. I'm now kind of regretful, or not really, but I get it. It's like
some of the things and thoughts that you had. Right?
And trust me, Ty. I'll say it right now, since this is public. Hey, you have to eat crow, man, on some of these things. For all this pushback, it's like, why won't you delegate this? It's because you started this business and y'all started at Central Arkansas. Well, Bud, the southeastern Louisiana stuff, because he built the heck out of that property. Like, that was the last thing to go. And so he now feels the pain of delegating your baby,
Yep.
100%. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, gentlemen, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
Appreciate what you're doing for the entire industry. It's fun.
Yes, sir. That was Wes Abercrombie. He is the vice president there at Peak, and a co-owner and president, Ryan Holloway, at Peak Sports Management. And of course, I'm Ty Brown. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.